Good evening and welcome to Artist Talk on Art on Monday, January 29th, 2024. Thank you for joining us. I'm Miriam Deutsch, ATOA Programming Director. Founded in 1974, ATOA is the art world's longest running and preeminent forum. We are now in our 50th year and soon look for more information about our gala and auction that will occur in May. Our archive resides at Archives of American Art of the Smithsonian, where it has surpassed 8,500 artists and 1,000 panels and dialogues. Also see the Artist Talk on Art YouTube channel to view over 100 recent Zoom recordings. Comments made by our presenters this evening do not necessarily reflect those of ATOA. And please join us on Monday, February 5th for Lenses and Brushes, exploring the artistic dialogue between painting and photography. It will feature photographer, film director Neil Slavin, who will be interviewed by Carrie Welch. Tonight, we're very proud to present the Artists as Curators in Nonprofit Art Spaces. Panelists include Jeannine Bardo, founder, artistic director, Stand4 Gallery in Brooklyn, New York. Shazzi Thomas, director of the Painting Center in Manhattan. Anne Trauben, founder, gallery director, curator, Drawing Rooms, Jersey City, New Jersey. The panel will be moderated tonight by Jennifer McGregor, a New York curator arts planner. Jennifer founded McGregor Consulting in 1990 to plan and curate artwork in the public realm and as a platform to engage non-traditional public spaces, diverse audiences, and artists through commissions, forums, exhibitions. Her clients and collaborators include nonprofits, museums, parks, and architects. Jennifer brings expertise in art projects and programs related to ecology, gardens, public engagement, and placemaking. She has activated connections to the environment by producing adventurous exhibitions, performances, and a residency program that explores nature, culture, and site at places such as Wave Hill in the Bronx, as well as many prominent public art spaces across the United States. She was first director of New York City's Percent for Art program from 1983 until 1990. It's now my pleasure to turn the program over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Miriam, and thank you so much for having us. And I also want to extend a big thank you to Anne, who came up with the idea for this panel and who invited us all to be here. Before I introduce the panelists, I'll just talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today, and thank you all for joining us. So we're envisioning this as a conversation where we're going to be sharing, our panelists will be sharing their perspectives. And there's a few different areas that we want to be talking about today. We would like to discuss the ecosystem for arts run and founded art spaces. Some are, there's some that are nonprofit organizations like the Drawing Rooms and the Painting Center, who's represented by Anne and Shazzi. And then others like Stand4 Gallery and Community Center are follow a different approach where artists are creating spaces to present the work of other artists that sometimes are building off of adjunct spaces that they're already involved in, or looking for places in the community and different ways of building different kinds of communities. So that's one area we want to touch on. Our panelists have all been trained as artists and approach their work as administrators and curators through a creative lens, rather than as art historians or arts administrators. And this is a really important point, that we're interested in teasing out how this shapes the way they approach the artistic and creative hats inform the way they approach their administrative and curatorial work. Let me just move this down. And then each of our panelists has really been in the trenches for a long time. And we're either at the organization where they work now or at a variety of organizations. And we want to think about it, since it's January, what are we excited about? What are our challenges? What are our in this space? And we will be opening the conversation up to questions, and we'd love to hear from others who are wearing similar hats of working as an artist and also working as a curator in the nonprofit, or in the the sort of how we look at this space. So I would like to introduce our panel. Anne Trauben is an artist, arts organizer, and curator. Her practice consists of drawing, collage, sculpture, and installation. She received a BA in studio art with a concentration in ceramics from Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona, and an MFA in ceramics from Tyler School of Art. She lives in the metropolitan New York area, and her studio is in Jersey City. So for the last 10 years, she has been very involved in the Drawing Rooms, a nonprofit art gallery and center located in Jersey City, where she was one of the founding artists and has been the gallery director and curator for the last 10 years. Shazzi Thomas received her BFA from Bard College. An abstract painter, her work addresses the interrelationship between design and chaos, and the parallels between our external and internal environments. Shazzi has been the director of the Painting Center for the last 18 years, and she's currently serving another hat as co-president of the Drawing Rooms. She also works as an assistant at Mickelman Fine Art. She's curated numerous exhibitions at the Broome Street Gallery and at the Painting Center, and more recently, far and wide at the Woodstock Artists Association, as well as opposing forces at the Katona Museum Artist Association, and on the surface at Studio Montclair. So she's working with artists from a lot of different angles. And finally, Jeannine Bardo, I love the way that everybody has like many hats right in their description, is a curator, arts educator, and artist, and a lifelong resident of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and a believer in community and collaboration. She is the founder and artistic director of Stand4 Gallery and Community Arts Center. She received her BFA in illustration from the School of Visual Arts, and her master's in art education and master's in fine arts from Brooklyn College. Her multidisciplinary focus is on humanities connections to the natural world. She has over 10 years experience as a curator in both public and private realms. Along with her work curating and directing Stand4 Gallery, she co-founded BioBAT Art Space, and co-curated the inaugural exhibition in 2019. So that's 5 years ago. And Jeannine and I worked together on an exhibition last year, which was like super fun, Bay Ridge through an Ecological Lens, and it received a Brooklyn Arts Council grant, and it was an interactive public community art exhibition with over 20 artists from the New York area that involved a lot of different things with Stand4 as kind of a hub for poetry, artist talks, community interventions, and film screening at the Alpine Theater, which was with documentary photographers. So that gives you a nice introduction to the wide range of ways that our panelists are involved in working with artists. So we thought if we can start by each of you introducing the space where you work, with the types of where it is, give us the look and feel. I think probably a lot of people are familiar with some of the spaces, but what type of exhibitions do you present, and what is your core program? So if we can, and at the same time, also talk about the community, both artistically, the artist community and the audience that you serve, and how that fits into the work that you do. So why don't we start with Anne?
Well, first of all, Jennifer, thank you so much. And I want to say Jennifer is an artist also. So Jennifer fits in our group here in a lot of ways as a moderator and also an artist who was very involved with nonprofit spaces. I'm so excited to do this and to have Shazzi and Jeannine be part of it because I so respect what they do. Okay, so Drawing Rooms is a nonprofit art space and art center and gallery in Jersey City. It is a program or a project of Victory Hall Inc. That is the nonprofit of which we're a part, was started by / with Jim Pastorino. He's the executive director of the nonprofit. And I knew him before Drawing Rooms existed because he was part of the beginnings of Victory Hall, which was really about 23 years ago. It used to be Victory Hall was the art center gallery in an old Elks Club lodge in downtown Jersey City. In 2012, Drawing Rooms started in a converted convent on Grand Street, which had all the little rooms, and everybody loved it because artists could have a little room to themselves as part of a themed show. So I was one of the founders. There were many of us that founded Drawing Rooms, and at this current time and for most of these years, it's Jim and I that are running our organization. So we were in that converted convent from 2012 to 2018, and then we moved to the Tops building, which is at the Manna campus in Jersey City also. And we were in a space from 2018 to the pandemic, and then we closed. And then we did a lot of public art projects, national public art projects. We were in a pop-up space. We did community-oriented projects. And then we reopened the space. We reopened in the space we're currently in now, which is an expansion of what we had before. So we have the previous space in the Tops building, and we have this new space in the Tops building, which is the Terrarium Gallery and the Alcove Gallery, all part of Drawing Rooms. We show, despite our name being Drawing Rooms, we show 2- and 3-dimensional work by emerging and mid-career artists from the area, Jersey City, from Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, the whole metro area, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and also nationally. And in our most recent show, the Big Small Show, which we've done, this is the 8th year we've done it, we had international artists in that show. So we do a number of themed shows during the year, and then one call, our fundraiser show. And that's the Big Small Show. We just finished the Big Small Show. And our next show will open March 1st. So I think that's my introduction.
Shazzi, how about if you go next and tell us about the Painting Center?
Sure. The Painting Center is a nonprofit artist-run space in New York City. It was started in 1993 by a group of painters, artists who felt like there was a need for a space dedicated to painting, and they were inspired by the name, the Drawing Center. That's why we're named the Painting Center. And at the time in Soho, they were located close to each other. Some of the founding members were people like Carl Plansky, David Fracken, Dana Gordon, some people like David Fracken that are still on our board, like founding members. Since it's an artist-run space, at any time we can have like up to 23 members, and they participate in different aspects of running the space. They also get to show every 2 years and 2-person or solo shows. That's part of our programming. And half of the year is member shows. The other half of the year is these outside shows, curated either by the members or guest curators. So we like to consider ourselves like a hybrid. So we're not a cooperative, we're an artist-run space, but really a part of the mission is to bring in our outside artists so that the focus is not on the core membership. So some of those outside shows include jury shows, invitationals, shows with a guest curator that funded and more high profile. The mission of the Painting Center is a space dedicated to painting. But like Anne said, we're not focused on just painting. She's just like the drawing rooms is not focused on just drawing. We have 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional work we show, photography, digital, everything. We try to expand the language. What else can I say? I wrote notes. I wrote some notes, so I wouldn't forget anything. And also really a part of our mission is to have a space for curators that are looking to present work. We do a lot of work with outside curators. So that's it for me.
Since you both brought up, having multiple artists be part of the founding of your centers, can you just talk, and maybe a little bit about how did they continue to be involved? And then Shazzi, with you, like how do new artists get to be part of the Painting Center? How does that
Sure.
work?
Well, some of the founding members, they serve on our advisory board. So they have historical knowledge. Some of them give us money and grants. We call them emeritus members, alumni members. They support the operational structural foundation of the Painting Center if they're not, members anymore. And to become a new member, you get voted in by the current membership and you present your portfolio. We used to do it in person and people used to actually bring paintings to the gallery. It was pretty crazy. But now we do it on Zoom, post-COVID. Zoom is the way to interview new applicants. Because there's 23 members and because the schedule is so tight, our shows rotate every 4 weeks. It's really intense. That's a unique thing about our programming is we always have a show up every 4 weeks. We have to always think about how many members we can have and the ratio, and the max is 23. So openings are maybe once a year, if that. It's very competitive to become a member because it's really difficult to get a slot.
Okay, and Jennifer, you asked about founders. Well, founders, besides Jim and I, were involved in the beginning. And at this point, I would say some of the founders that are still around are involved in drawing rooms as artists whose work we show, just like anybody else's work that we show. No preferential treatment, but as the work makes sense in a show. We are an artist-run space because Jim is an artist and I'm an artist, but we don't have a core group of people that we show over and over again, and we don't show ourselves over and over again. And we only might fit ourselves into a show because it made sense, and then there were a number of other artists in the show. So we're really like two people who run this space. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we can do it, and but we are also artists. And I do want to add quickly that Victory Hall, which is our nonprofit, has many programs besides drawing rooms, the gallery. We do Victory Hall Press, where we create catalogs for every show. And in the past, we created catalogs sometimes for artists. We have a program called Rainbow Thursdays Artists, which is the manager of that program is Jim's wife, Jill. And the two of them run that program where they bring art to a developmentally disabled population in Bayonne at 2 sites, I believe. It used to be 2 sites. I think it still is 2 sites, maybe 1 site now. And sometimes they have other artists that may come in and help work with them. We do a project called the Art Project, where we put artists' works in the lobbies of 5 residential, luxury, high-rise buildings. Anything else? That may be all, that may be all our programs. Yeah,
That sounds like quite a bit,
yes, it is.
but interconnected in a nice
Yeah.
way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and even though I'm the gallery director, I'm involved in most aspects of planning of the rest of these things, if not doing. I don't do Rainbow Thursdays, Jim and Jill do that, but the rest of it I have a lot to do with.
Thanks. Jeannine, tell us about Stand4, where you are right now.
Yes, I'm in the gallery right now. Just a quick, I'll tell you, behind me is Susan Hoffman Fishman's work, and the show it's a 2-person show with her and Leslie Sobel. And it's called In the End, A Devastating Beauty. So that's the beauty behind me right now. Stand was started actually as a socially engaged art project. In 2015, I was doing these pop-up shows in the community of Bay Ridge, where I live, and I was bringing art directly into the community. And I felt like it was a really important thing to do because I grew up here. There's never been any art programming, really. I mean, there's not many places to see art in Bay Ridge, and it's also like a working class immigrant community, and people are busy. So I just was bringing art into different spaces in the community. So I would do a restaurant, a bar, a sewing. There was a sewing studio, a paper company, a garage. Trying to think of what else. Yeah. And so I did about 7. Oh, there was a church. My plan was to keep doing this. I wanted to keep doing that. I was enjoying it. They were successful. So there was a wine bar as well. I would kind of create a narrative and then I would, the owners of these places host a pop-up show, and the artists would put up their work, sell it, and it was just a lot of fun. It was very successful. The artists did sell a lot of work. So that's how it started. And then I was looking for my own studio space, and I decided to look here, and the real estate person showed me this doctor's office. So Stand is housed in an old doctor's office. So it was set up for another doctor to come in. And when I walked into the space, it was just special. So I took it as my studio, which is in the basement, and created the brick, have this brick and mortar space now. So, but I still wanted like a socially engaged project. I still feel like it's important. I really wanted to open this up for the community. I really wanted it to be a welcoming place for people to come and see art, and really fine art, and not feel intimidated, but feel like it was part of their community. But I also wanted a place for artists to, experiment, come in and show, and just feel like they had a place, like they had a place a belonging place, like a kind of a community. So that is how it started. And I started the Stand project in 2015, and I opened this in 2017. So we're going into, I gave myself 2 years. I said, every 2 years, I'm going to see if this is working. And so far it's working. So I want to keep it going. And yes. And so this year I went back out into the community, which was always my dream. My dream when I started the project, the Stand project, was to curate the whole community. So with Jennifer's help, we did Bay Ridge through an Ecological Lens in the spring, and we were able to bring the artists really out into the community. So they were in the park spaces, and they were even out here in the front of the gallery, and alongside, on the avenues and in the movie theater. And it also gave me a really great opportunity, since Jennifer was curating and bringing in these really wonderful artists. It was giving me an opportunity to really get to know my neighbors and really talk to people. And I know a lot of people here, but, when I was going introducing the project and getting to know the business owners and So it was a really great opportunity for me to kind of introduce Stand to them. And the generosity that came from that was really wonderful too. So we got a lot of sponsorship from our business owners, and I think it just is a really good example of what a great community is, like what a really good community could be, you know, where people they know each other, they're helping each other. It's, you know, it's a small but big place. So I think that's all I have to say right now.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you all is the logistics of being a nonprofit or being a community-based group, or like the structure around how you work and how that's how that supports the work that you're doing, or how that's worked out for you. And Anne and Shazzi, you both are part of nonprofits, and you were just talking a little bit about being in an umbrella of many other different things that you know, one of many things that your organization does. Is there a way that being nonprofit has made you be able to do more things than you otherwise would do?
You mean do more things as an organization?
Yeah.
Well, we can apply for funding, and you know, that's the benefit of being a nonprofit. I mean, you know, both Jim and I have the heart of nonprofit. We have those kind of ideas anyway, to try to present ideas that can help enrich people and bring people together. And it just made sense that our organization would be a nonprofit. And by being a nonprofit, we can apply for public funding through foundations and through Jersey City, and you know, through donations, things like that. So I think that's the right fit for us. And in saying that, you know, we also sell art, and we're also interested in selling more art, and that's a big part of what we want to do as well. So being a nonprofit doesn't preclude us from doing that.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And how about the painting center? How does that?
Well, we've been a nonprofit since 2003, because one of our board members at the time felt like we needed to have a status, like Anne said, to apply for grants, and change the structure of the organization from just being like strictly donations. We needed grant funding. So the way that our organization works is a third of it comes from membership dues, like paying your dues. A third of it comes from grants, foundations, and another third comes from donations and now sales. For a long time, we weren't sales focused, for a very long time. But then during COVID and after COVID, it's been a legitimate way to make income for us. And it doesn't change our nonprofit status because we're really not making a lot of money. Our commission that we take is 30%, and we give 70% to the artist. And a lot of the money that we make, we just put it right back into our programming. So we're really just focused on selling for the artist. That's our goal.
Are you finding that you're selling directly from the shows, or are you selling through the internet, or what are?
A combination. Some artists have their following and their personal collectors. A lot of our sales are through it's through Artsy. Artsy is just a good resource to connect you to art collectors that you would never, you know, sell to. Yeah. So Artsy is 90% of our sales.
That's cool. And Jeannine, I know you're sort of transitioning the structure of Stand4.
Yeah, I'm in limbo right now, because I know I'm like Anne, the ideas that are here, it's definitely more not like for getting grants and stuff like that. It's not really a commercial gallery yet. And yes, we do sell the art, but there's so many things that happen here that are hard to sell, it's a lot about ideas and bringing people in here, and more of a community space. And it's definitely something that I have to transition to, because it just makes a lot of sense for continuing, to keep it going, and instead of donations and and again, because I could have a show that's just about ideas, or just brings people into the space to talk or something like, so it's a hard one to have commercial to make money off of. So and that's fine with me, but I just want, it's like just to keep it going. I think the not-for-profit, I'm like one or two steps away from becoming a not-for-profit.
But you've had like a fiscal sponsor, right?
Yes.
No.
Until that happens, yeah.
So let's talk about the pros and cons of wearing so many different hats. And as a creative practitioner, what do you feel like your insights? What are the insights that you bring from your creative side? And not that that's the big umbrella of you as a super creative person, no matter what you're doing. But when you're doing these different things like writing grants or sending rejection letters to artists, or, all of the different things that are part of the job, like, where do you feel like your training, your background as an artist has helped to broaden the way that you work in supporting other artists?
I'll start. I don't know if it was my training. I think it's just me as a person, me as an artist, whether I had training or not, just likes to look at art. I just like to look at art all the time. And I have a knack for finding connections between things. And I'm always in my brain cataloging, that was like that, that's sort of like that person's doing that thing. And this is running all the time. And it would be running, I think, even if I wasn't a curator. So now I have an outlet for it. and I enjoy it. And but I think that it sometimes does take up a lot of space in my head, so that it could get in the way of doing my own personal work, because I've got to quiet that stuff down. And besides just finding connections or themes to shows, in curating shows, in running a gallery, in being part of a nonprofit like this, there's so many artists that you're dealing with, and different personalities, and different connections and relationships, and this is happening and this is happening, and it's a lot. It's a lot, but still, with that said, I would never not want to be doing it. It's the perfect fit for me to be doing it. And I love to give artists opportunities, and I love to either see something that sparks an idea, or I have an idea, and then I see somebody who's on that path. And I've done this a few times, and say to them, what do you think about this? Would you want to make more, bigger in that direction? And then I'll give you a show. And it's happened. And artists have made like tremendous bodies of work from these sort of opportunities. And that's really exciting. And also providing a space where artists and the community can see work and interact with each other and learn ideas about art, ideas about social justice, ideas about all sorts of things, and just enrich the way they think in a different way. It's just really thrilling to do. So I think I answered some of what you asked.
I'll jump in there, just only because your mind is a lot like my mind. So I'll just connect that, because we're connecting all the time. Yeah, that's kind of the way I work too, like just the idea of making connections, but also like there's a couple of things that I really, really believe in. Like there's needs that we have to eat, we need shelter, we have our basic needs, and one of them is each other. Like we need each other. And I really believe that. And I believe, and I really believe that bringing people together is very important. And I also love artists, and I love art, and I love the way artists think. Like I just love seeing the way people come up with different ideas, and you know, and how they connect, you know, solve their own problems. And there's a lot of conversation that can come from that. And so, yeah, that's what keeps driving me too. It's just like the big picture of everything, you know.
Okay, I'll go next. I guess I started wearing a lot of different hats because out of survival. You know, one of my mentors said to me, it's just not enough to be an artist. And this was like my early 20s. And she was like, you should learn more about the business side of art. I didn't want to be a teacher at the time. So she said, if you want to do the business side of things, you have to learn about sales. You have to learn about design. You have to learn about how to work with artists and build relationships and how to work with collectors. So I've kind of spent, you know, the past 18, 20 years that I've been in the field, just learning different aspects of the art world. It started as survival, but then it started out as a real passion and a love for working with artists and different organizations and what more can I do and how far can I push myself. You know, I'm always looking for like the next project outside of the painting center to do something more, to extend my own knowledge, my own practice. But I really love curating and putting work into a space. I think for me, that's my current creative outlet since I'm not working as much creatively. So that's brings me a lot of joy.
Jennifer, can I add one thing? Oh, all right, I lost you, but anyway, I want to say that I feel that curating shows is part of my artistic practice. It is such a joy to do and to come up with these ideas in my head and make it, you know, it's in my head and then it's in the space, or then it exists, is a big part of my practice besides my own artwork. So being a curator it's all part of the same thing of my artistic practice.
That's
I was just going to jump in and say, I didn't talk about the cons though.
Oh,
So some of the cons, you just never have any time. It's like, you're doing too much, very little time. It's stressful when you have a passion for it. That's a con, but you still do it because you love it.
I think that's the biggest con, is the time. Yeah.
Are there ways that you found to make time that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I think is saying no more frequently. I usually say yes to everything, especially, you know, everything that happened during the pandemic and with George Floyd. I started getting a lot of offers to do stuff, you know, and I was taking everything on and burning out. And I just decided to just be a little bit more selfish and pick my projects a little bit more wisely for my time and focus on things that I'm more passionate about. So it's just some time management and some research and figuring out if it's worth it, you know.
That makes sense. Do either of you have other cons that you would think of or challenges?
Well, for me, the time is a big one, but now I'm working again to sustain the space, you know, and so that's a little less time. But teaching is something I really enjoy, so it's not a burden, but but I am finding myself getting into the studio. Like one thing about the way I work, I've always overloaded my life, you know, it's just the way who I am, you know, it seems like that's the way I work. But when I do get to work, I am really like focused and very efficient. Like I'm there, I'm present, I'm in that studio. I get a lot done in a little time, you know. So I've been finding those places to go. I've been getting there, you know, maybe different times than I used to go, but that's what I've been doing.
and I don't know if this is a con, but I've learned, I mean, not just to say no, but to think about what I might initially get excited about and then, you know, think about it before jumping into something and think about, can it be done efficiently? What's the cost to doing it? And also just all the way around, try to be more efficient, especially in working with artists and in our planning. You know, because we've been doing this for a while now, so you like to think you get smarter over time.
Mhm. Well, it's interesting that you also talked about how your curatorial work is so inspiring and creative, and that's what I've always felt. And I've worked in public art, and I've worked as a curator, and in my time at Wave Hill, I realized how much I used that space. It wasn't my installation, but the curation of it was my installation. And it really hit home when early on, my brother, who was like he would come to every show and every opening, and there was 2 shows right, in a row. And one was like, everything was on the walls. And the next one, everything was like in the space, like it was all in the space. And that show, he's like, it's so claustrophobic. I like that other show so much better. And that's when it struck me that I was like really thinking about the space in a way by selecting the work and selecting the artist, and what you were saying, Jeannine, which is almost like sort of setting the table with these different people who are going to be there and be part of the show, and that bringing people together. Curating is a great way to be doing that. There's a couple of questions here, and the first one is very sort of just specific, Shazzi, which was, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but it was what is the percentage that Artsy or some other platform takes from the sales, in terms of if you're thinking about the funding?
Sure. Artsy takes 5% of the sale. In general, we pay a subscription fee. But we don't take that 5% away from the artists. So we would take 25% in that case. So it'd be 25% to us, 5% to Artsy, 70% to the artist.
That's great. That's great that you do. And it probably opens up to many people who wouldn't necessarily be walking into the drawing space.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about what we're doing, like our shows rotate really quickly, like every 4 weeks, very fast. So the shows have a life on Artsy. Like we can be making sales from a show like a year or 2 ago. And that's really good for an artist, to have that sale, to have that part of the commission. So I think it's great.
Could I ask a question about that directly? So with Artsy, do you like? It just seems like a lot of work. Is it you like you have how many people, how many people are in your
it's
office
a lot of
helping
work.
you?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. It's an animal. It's it's
She
a
has
beast.
more slow.
I do have an intern, and now I have an assistant, which is like amazing. That's like amazing. It's a lot of data entry. There's a lot of work, and there's a lot of work to make that sale. It's constant back and forth with the collector. They want better images. They want a video. They want you to show what it looks like in the space. They want to think about it for a couple of days. They want to negotiate on the price. I mean, one sale can take you a week. It really is a labor of love, but I think sales, I love them so much. Like it's like an adrenaline rush. Like every time I make a sale, I'm like, it's amazing. It's exciting, because I want to do that for the artists. So it takes a lot of time, but once you sort of get everything working with Artsy, you can make like 1 or 2 sales a month. If it's a good month, I'd say like 5 or 6 sales. So we're like averaging maybe 30,000 a year in sales.
That's terrific. And
Which
how
is
would you
more than we ever had?
how does that compare to the other sales? Because that was sort of part of the person's question.
Oh, sure. The other sales happen generally the night of the opening. someone comes in that might be following the artist or know the artist, will make a sale in the moment. Doesn't happen on Artsy. Typically we'll do like a Square transaction or Zelle, because Zelle doesn't take out any fees. And we love that. We don't want to pay any commission, any fees. So.
Right. So I know I'm having some questions here, but I think I'm going to just ask a couple of them that sort of are piggybacking on the things that we've been talking about. And there's one question, which is the difference between a gallerist and a curator. Since we've been talking about our different hats, if anyone wants to, it's not like everyone has to address that, but if anyone wants to answer that.
I think that this isn't exactly that, but the gallery director might be the person who the curator might report to. The curator might do the actual work, and the gallery director might, I don't know, either do the administrative stuff or come up with the idea. And I'm not really sure, but I think gallerist could be used in a commercial gallery also, and maybe it could be used in a nonprofit, and then the gallerist in a nonprofit would be the curator. But in a commercial space, I don't know if they really think about themselves as being curators, because they're really not doing shows that often, unless they're Hauser Wirth, who's kind of like a commercial space that's really with a nonprofit head. So I think it's a term used more in a commercial space.
Yeah, I agree. I think gallerist is more what you would call someone who runs a gallery, a for-profit gallery. And a curator can exist in lots of planes. A curator can be an employee of a museum that is in charge of their collection, an independent curator who's putting together shows that might be in a nonprofit space or a for-profit space. But the curator is usually the one who's sort of coming up with the idea and putting together the artists and the artwork that's going to be in the show. Mm-hmm. And the gallerist may be doing that too, but the gallerist is usually working from their stable of artists. Mm-hmm. And I think in the example Shazzi was giving us, there's the painting center has half of the shows with the stable of artists that are part of the center, and then the other half are then organized by other people, whether they're curators or people that you invite or whatever. And another question that I think it sort of dovetails on when we were talking about how we think about our communities is how do we think about growing an audience and getting visitors to the gallery? And, you know, we've been talking about artists, but the idea of who our audience is and how we are approaching that. Jeannine, you touched on it a little bit with your work, but if everyone might want to answer that.
I was shutting off my phone. I'm sorry. Could you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
It was just how you grow an audience, bring new visitors, make sort of go beyond just the people that know the artists who are in the show, but yeah, develop a bigger footprint.
I know. I've done it. I've invited community organizations here, and it's pretty organic. People are starting to come in, bring friends. You know, now it's becoming a regular place to come. On Saturdays, we're busy now. You know, people know we're open on Saturdays from 12 to 3, so they just come in knowing that the show up, and they come in before the show's closed. So bringing people in, and then also reaching out to schools and other organizations and libraries to do programming with them, the library and the school sometimes. Yeah, just depending on what we're putting up, we'll reach out to different organizations.
Shazzi, you want to go next?
Sure, I can go next. Well, we always try to have an additional event attached, outside of the opening receptions that we have. So we'll typically do a closing reception and maybe an artist talk in person or on Zoom. We've done a couple of poetry readings and performances. We're always looking for ways to get people in the gallery outside of that opening night. Some other things we do, I have a partnership with Pratt and some other colleges like Pratt and Bennington for interns that I sort of mentor and teach. They're working for me, but it really is like a mentorship. And a lot of school groups visit our gallery and we give them personal talks.
And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We reach out throughout the state through different venues to get the word out about what we're doing. We always do artist talks, which turned into artist panel discussions, which have gotten pretty popular. And we have a packed house for that. We did something at one point with the schools. It's a little different. It's a little different for us than we're all different with Jeannine, Shazzi, and I. There are a lot of different art venues of different sorts in Jersey City. So people get spread out all over the place. But one thing I did early on was when I first started as the curator of drawing rooms in the convent was I said, I'm going to do my best to unghettoize us. And I'm going to get artists from Brooklyn and Manhattan and Queens and the Bronx and wherever to come over to Jersey City and be part of our shows. And they will bring people. And then those artists will interact with Jersey City artists will interact with them, new relationships will happen. And, let's plant this seed and let it grow. And we got a lot of people coming from all over the place for that. So I think those are the different ways that we get people in. And we're always looking at more ways of getting people to know about us and to come and see if they like what we're doing and come back.
Are there ways that you've found social media to be particularly productive in that area of outreach?
I think social media could be very productive. And Jim or I didn't really used to do social media because we're always running like a fire's behind us to do everything. And we had Alejandro working with us for many years. He was an intern and he was great. And he's not with us anymore, but he used to do social media. And we just thought, oh, this is so great what he's doing. We got to a certain level of followers and it just kind of, we need many more followers. So like everything else I do, I'm always looking around. How are they doing that? What's happening? Who likes that? What's the thing? What makes sense for us? And so I've started adopting a little bit of a different way of strategizing about social media because I'm the one who's doing artsy now and I like it and I'm excited about it. And by dribs and drabs, in the last couple months, I significantly raised our numbers more than we had in the recent time. And I got big plans to raise them even more. Social media is such a big way such a great way to reach other people in your area, outside of your area, for all sorts of things. For more artists to be interested in what we're doing, to show more artists, to sell more. One thing is I think that, I'll just share this. I think that people like when you are kind of personal, you kind of have they kind of know there's a person behind the posts. And so I think that that's the persona that we're going to take more on, which is fine because I was doing that. I used to do that on Facebook and I wasn't doing artsy, and it seems like people are much less interested in Facebook. So I'm just going to transfer those kind of ideas to Instagram. That's what I've been doing and it's helping.
Yeah, I find social media to be really effective and a good way to communicate, and also a good now it's like calling cards now. now it's like, I don't ask for people's cards, I get their Instagram handle, and it's an easier way for me to keep track of artists and to kind of keep a vision, like, because I guess because I'm so visual as well. It's like to see, you know, to keep track of artists instead of putting cards in my pocket and never looking back at them. And, you know, I'm more engaged with people. And yeah, I find Instagram to be good. And then Facebook is good for just sending out. I don't like the Facebook business page. That's really, you know, I've kind of gravitated away from Stand as a business page because you don't get any traction unless you're paying. And I'm, you know, so it's more of a, like, you know, on my personal page. So it's more of like a personal thing that I'm talking to people. And it, like you said, it's more personal. Yeah.
Instagram for us is, I mean, probably like the lifeblood of our organization. Like in 2016, I think, or 15, we had maybe like 1,000 followers or 500. It was very low. And then one of our members, who was very savvy with Instagram and just how to sort of connect the dots to get followers and to, you know, grow our numbers, she got us to 20,000, you know, over like 2 or 3 years. And it was kind of incredible. And so we kind of are maintaining that, like inching towards 21,000. But we use it for everything. And we found a way to make it a little bit more professional because it wasn't always, the presentation wasn't always professional. So we've sort of raised the standard for Instagram because it's just our #1 way to communicate.
There's a question here, which is sort of similar to one of the other questions I had, which was, how do you find that working with other artists and curating shows feeds your own creative process? And have you been influenced in any ways that your direction of your own work might have been?
Definitely.
Yeah, if you can think of
Definitely.
any examples or that, yeah.
Definitely. And not just ideas in my own studio, but what was the other thing? Sometimes it's an idea that I have, and maybe it's something I'm passionate about, but it's not work that I might do. And then I'll come up with a show for that. Or it's something that I think somehow does relate to me, but I don't put myself in that. Oh yeah, it's all for me intertwined. Hardly ever has there been a show that I don't think I could do a show that I wasn't passionate about, inspired about, even if it didn't exactly come out in my work at that moment. I was like, this is everything, you know? So it's, yeah, all the time.
I think that for me, like I realized that I tend to curate shows heavy in abstraction, you know, because that's just what in my personal practice, that's just how I paint. So I find myself curating work in a similar, people working in a similar process. But not to say that I don't love figurative art. I sort of also like to explore how figurative work fits with abstraction. And what's important to me is color. I care a lot about how color works in a space. So I think a lot about that color, which is important in my own work.
Yeah, the same thing. A lot of the art that's here in Stand is similar to things that I'm really interested in as well. You know, a lot of socially engaged art, a lot of environmental work, a lot of, I mean, Stand4 is, the name of the gallery is Stand4 something, you know, so it's, you know, it was Stand first and then it's Stand4 as the gallery. And, so yeah, those are things that I'm interested in. So those are a lot of the things that I choose. And then for my own practice, I'm sure that I'm being influenced. I don't know, like, you know, you're influenced by everything around you. And I know that seeing other artists, of course, they'll probably trigger things. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, you know, like I'm influenced by so many different things. I'm influenced by the daily paper. That a lot of my ideas come from just the things that I'm reading all the time. But, you know, the other thing is the artists that I've met, I've become such good friends with. So I have a really nice community of artist friends that really are, feed me, and they just, they inspire me. And then, like, so I could talk to somebody. I feel like I've gained a lot from having this space. And I've met a lot of really good people that are very generous with their thought process, and they're very giving and very, like if I have a question, they quickly, let's Zoom or, just, I feel like I have a nice community from just having this space.
Mhm. So there's a question about so your organizations are brick and mortar, are all, and do all the shows take place there? Jeannine, you talked a little, maybe you can go into a little more detail about the Bay Ridge show, but
Yeah.
other things that you've done in the community.
Yeah, so the spring show is a really good example. We used Stand as a hub. So it was like and Stand is actually in the center of the community, like geographically. And so we had, what do we have, 17 artists here, Jennifer? We had a lot of artists in the space, but it didn't seem crowded. But then
kind of what we did was that some artists only had work in the space.
Yes.
And artists who had work elsewhere, we brought them, there was some clue or some aspect of what they did. And then there were some people who did more performative work in the parks. And then there was a trace of that. So you could see what they did when you came to the gallery. But the actual thing that took place was in the botanical garden or somewhere else. So it was, and then the filmmakers, we had a bunch of the filmmakers from the film series, their films were in the film series, but you could watch their videos in the gallery. So there was definitely a kind of, you could go to the hub and see what was happening, but then you could just experience it in the community and never go and Stand4.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And yeah, even one of the artists actually did a piece under the marquee of the movie theater. So it's still there. So there's still like an image of the marquee under the, so there's still traces of the show out there. And yeah, there were performances and it grew. We started smaller and it just kept growing. The film series was not something we intended, but we thought about it and it happened. And the community people that we were meeting were on board for all of this. So it kind of really was organic and it was very enjoyable. It was like, and it really took on a life of its own. And it's hopefully next spring, something similar can happen again. It's big though. It's a big show.
I think another thing about it too was we planned it for like well over a year. Yeah. Like, sometimes you have to do shows really quickly, like, okay, we need something for April and you got to scurry around. But this, we really had time. The artists had time to think about things, and each of them ended up doing things that were sort of beyond their initial kernel of their idea because they had time to mull it over. So Audrey has a comment for Jeannine and a question for the artist curators. Do you want to just verbally ask those questions?
What's the question?
Asking if you want to.
Yes, so I'll introduce myself as also an artist curator. And I know Jeannine in both relationships. I'm very proud to say that Jeannine, I believe it was one of your first exhibitions, and she showed a beautiful sculpture, and we were happy to sell that for her at our gallery's Tabula Rasa. I'm also an artist and a resident of Bay Ridge, and through Jeannine, I participated in a lot of the projects she was doing before Stand4 opened. And I can say, and this will be of interest to you, Miriam, that one of her projects called Misericordia, the pieces that I had exhibited there made their way in front of the eyeballs of Michael Valentine, and that led to a very big project in my life, the Refugee Project. So that's a little bit of background. Now I'm going to get to my question, which actually takes a little bit of a preface also. So about a month ago, I was invited by Artist Talk on Art also to do an artist curator presentation. Now I work with not-for-profits too. That's a big part of my my passion, is to help other artists. And I love everything you guys have been saying. But I will say that the artists that were not nonprofit artist curators all did a little presentation, including their own artwork in their introductions. So, and I noticed all three of you, one of the first things I was doing was like looking, well, where's their artwork? What do they do? And so you can address this question, whether it's as like a psychological thing. Are you less egotistical being working with not-for-profits? I would love that context of knowing what your artwork is. And I don't know whether there's any way that any of it could get slid in right now so we would know, or we'll look you up on Instagram, because I agree that's a great way to see things. But anyway, that's my commentary, that as one group we did it one way, you guys have approached it a different way, and I would really love to be familiar with your work. So thank you, and I'm going to go mute now.
Yeah, thank you, Audrey. That's actually really a good, I guess, yeah, it's like you think of yourself as one hat here and another hat here. And it's like, how do you put yourself? It seems like so much, so we decided it would be more of a dialogue and a conversation. But I agree, that it's a good thing to listen to too, because it's like, yes, I would love to see Anne's work. I would love to see Shazzi's work, so yeah. That was a good comment.
I was waiting for that too, and I'm sort of disappointed about it. I would love to see your guys' work. I mean, that's what I thought would come up right away. So I expected that.
Oh, that's so nice of you all. I think it's a hard balance. Like I am definitely both, but I think if I'm doing a lot of talking about drawing rooms, I feel like there's a sort of like ego thing of being an artist that's got to step back, instead of like maybe using that moment to say, yeah, I'm the gallery director and the curator, and I'm an artist, and now look at my work. Like, I don't know. I guess I thought, or I'm thinking this was mostly about our organizations and about what we do in those organizations, and not as much visual. But if I knew that you all specifically wanted, I would have done that. But that's just my way of thinking, like, don't be pushy in this moment, so sorry about that. Maybe we can't, I don't know, you could go to social media. And, I'll say, because there's so much work at what we do, for me, often being an artist takes a back seat, and I'm always having to like carve the time out and really do that. And my website's very behind, and my social media is very behind. And but I accept that, because it at this point it has to be that way, and I keep working hard to get things with what we're doing in a certain place so it won't have to be that way. I don't know how to make it 50-50 at the moment.
And I thought,
Can I make a comment? Can I weigh in here for just a second? I'm sorry, this is Babs Reinbold.
Yeah, can you just say who you are?
Perhaps.
Yeah, well, I think that an interesting way, I was on a panel with Grace Roselli last year for Pandora's Box. And it was supposed to, again, it was just mostly a dialogue. But what we did, which was kind of an interesting way of doing it, is that while we were introducing each of the people, there were 4 or 5 of us on the panel, I don't remember. And then we just picked 4 images, and then they flashed as you're talking about the person, because you're an artist still. That's part of who you are. And it's a more visual and interesting way to handle a panel. That was my only thought. So instead of having to do a presentation and say, here, this is my work, you do the background, you show a few images, and then you go on to your panel discussion. That's my 2 cents.
Excellent, Babs. Maybe we come back and do that again. But that's excellent. I didn't even think of that.
I just wanted to also note that you, Anne, you have your website, you have your curatorial resume, and you have your artist resume, and you've made it be, we can go to your website and see all the things that you do in one place. And that, I think, is also a tricky thing, like how, when you're busy promoting your space and your show and your activity, it sometimes can be hard to know where you're putting your focus. But I thought the way you do it on your website is really nice.
You do, because now in what we're talking about here, I'm thinking, well, maybe I should combine everything all together. I think my brain always wants to compartmentalize things, so I'm always going back and forth. Should I do it this way? That's good. No, maybe now I'll do it this way.
No, I guess what I was saying is I can find the information about, and I think that people probably, like, it's easy to say, well, look at all the shows she's been in. She's a curator. Look at all the things she's curated.
Yeah.
So I'm aware of your activities in both places.
Okay.
May I say something?
Yeah.
Hey, Jennifer, it's Liz Keithline.
Oh, hi. You know what? It's nice if you want to, because we can't necessarily know who you are on our screen with lots of faces, and some people may not be able to, maybe looking on their phone, so they can't see you. So if you're going to insert a question, please just say who you are.
Nice to be here, everyone, and thank you, Jennifer, and participants. I just want to quickly say I am an artist and also a curator and nonprofit administrator, and one does sublimate oneself. I mean, that's just the truth. And the reason is, let's use Shazzi, who is very talented, as an example. Shazzi goes out, she gets a solo show, she gets a great review. The great majority of artists at the Painting Center say, God damn it, Shazzi deserves this. This is fantastic for her. But there is some possible professional jealousy, and it is a very difficult balance. I'm just being candid. I think there isn't necessarily a way, and maybe this is female. If we were all men, would we be saying, absolutely, come to my show next week? I'm not sure, but it does seem distinctly female to say, no, my role here is in the background, and that's a wonderful, legitimate, valuable, terrific thing to do. But that doesn't mean that it isn't a balancing act.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I recently had a solo show, and then in the midst of our big small show, or maybe the show before, people were saying, oh, I loved what you did, I want to talk to you. And then I'm the gallery director and the curator, and I say, that's for another time. Let's celebrate you here. Let's talk about this show. I mean, it would be wrong for me not to do that. It would be sort of like selfish, like, no, this is just all about me, when my moment wasn't there. Like, if you want to talk about me and my whatever, that's in my space, and you could talk to me outside about it. But when we're here in this space, I want to talk about all of this and me as a curator here, because that's this, so it is a balancing thing. It is. That's a good point.
Well, Jeannine and Anne and Shazzi, are there questions that you wanted to ask each other? That was going to be one section of our talk, and we kind of zipped into these other questions from our fabulous audience, but.
There's so many things were answered already, it was a good conversation. Yeah, I think I asked one question and then a couple of them were already answered. I do want to say one thing though. I think one thing about these spaces is that I feel like they kind of push against trends sometimes, and like, you know, I feel like it's a more open space for, you know, like for ideas. At least I feel like I feel like artists have a place to kind of experiment in spaces like this, you know, where in other places it might be more of a, you know, you get to that space. But I think in spaces like this, it's really, really a good place for artists to take chances.
Yeah, I agree. I think that at the painting center, I think a lot of the reason why we have our members, there's longevity in our membership is because, I mean, we don't take any commission on anything they sell, which is a great benefit to them, but also they have control over whatever the whole space. They can show whatever they want. We don't have any particular viewpoint. Like, it really is a space for them to show whatever they want. And there's a lot of freedom in that for them as artists. So I agree with what you're saying.
We have a question from Miriam, which is, how do you think your curation as an artist is different from art historians or gallerists?
I know the way I curate, it comes from, it's just the ideas will come from making the connections, creating a narrative. It's usually a lot of the stuff comes from things I'm reading and words and just things that kind of are all floating around me at the same time, and they kind of fuse. And it's like, I have to put them together because it's something that's, you know, just like they're all right there. And it's, you know, like, so that's for me, it's not like I'm not looking at anything historically. I go back, like sometimes it could be something historical, but I'm not like, that's not my beginning. My beginning will come from something else, something that really drives, and then all the different connections that are happening at the same time. So that's how it works for me.
I would jump in and say, I think that to pick up on what you were saying earlier about experimentation, I think that there's a bandwidth for experimentation that is different than somebody who wants to see a trajectory and wants to see the work fitting into my idea as a curator, and this work is just going to fit into that and illustrate what my concept or my ideas are. And I think as what I've observed in the world of working with different curators and whatnot is just that I think that there's that, okay, the artist tells me that they want to do this thing with fish and snails and this and that, and moths are gonna hatch, and you know, all of these things, and we're gonna figure it out and do it. And yeah, if I have to drive and go pick up the fish at the place on the Hudson River, you know, like, we're gonna make it happen, you know. And that's where it's sort of coming from, because there's this enthusiasm about this person who's doing something really special and exciting, and you want to, you know, and rather than like, well, our budget isn't going to really allow for that, or, you know, I think there's a different, you're just coming from a different point of view.
I was going to say that typically I get inspired by something I may see an artist's work, or maybe a group of artists, their work that I want to see together. The only time I may look at something historically, I may do research on if a title was used before, a statement was used before, like, you know, similar ideas by another curator. I do research on that context, like what's out there, what are people doing, what are the ideas, to not have so much overlap, or maybe develop the language of that idea, you know?
Yeah, I think as a nonprofit, we can provide a space where artists can figure out an idea that they wouldn't have an opportunity to do some other place. And I think that's really exciting. So I think that maybe a gallerist wouldn't think that way so much in a commercial space because they have a different focus. But I think as a nonprofit, we're looking for experimental stuff, or we're looking to have a show that takes a stand, or a new way to look at something. I think it's all a lot about ideas and different points of view, and different ways of thinking about things.
Mhm.
Well, that's a great note to end this wonderful program on. We're just about at the end of our time. What an excellent panel and impressive work all of you are doing. It's and you can just sense your enthusiasm and passion for it. And the artists are very fortunate to have your exhibit spaces and you doing your terrific work. So thank you to Anne, thank you to Jennifer, Jeannine, and Shazzi. And thanks to everyone for joining us this evening. And thanks to Vanessa for handling all the Zoom problems and issues. And thanks to all the volunteers that make Artist Talk on Art happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you.
Great to see